Schwart. I'm here to present my research project, Drowning in Public Memory, the Legacy of Exxon Valdez Oil Spill. Have you ever wondered what drowning would feel like? Typically, it can take from a couple seconds to a couple minutes for a person to drown. For the sake of our time, let's just say it will take about 30 seconds to drown successfully. Your body gets plunged into water. You instinctively gasp, but there's no air. The panic sets in. You try to hold your breath, but the urge to breathe becomes unbearable as carbon dioxide builds up in your system. So you take a gasp. Now there's water in your lungs. You start coughing. Your body starts to spasm as your brain slowly starts to shut off from the lack of oxygen. And then there's simply nothing to it. But drowning can be also described more than just a physical state. It can be also described as an emotional state, which leads me back to my research question: how did the evolving scientific evidence and legal proceedings of the Exxon Valdez oil spill influence public perception of Exxon and the oil industry both at the time and in the later public memory? To answer this question, I used numerous sources, including Private Empire, ExxonMobil, and American Power by Steve Cole, to gauge in the history of the Exxon company in itself and how it responded to the crisis later and what did it do to prevent it, as well as Why We Hate the Oil Companies by John Hofmeister. He used to be CEO of the Shell company, so it was a great inside source into how companies, if they have any procedure to responding to crises. And the original court document from the trial of State of Alaska plaintiff versus Joseph Hazelwood, the defendant. What was even Exxon Valdez? Why do we care about this? Exxon Valdez is the name of the oil tanker on right after midnight on March 24th of 1989. It has struck a blight reef in Prince William Sound. It traveled another 2 miles before striking a second reef, stopping completely and spilling over 11 million gallons of oil. The main issue was declared as a human error, as a lot of workers on the crew of the tanker were heavily overworked. The Coast Guard systems were also overworked, and there was an issue of substance abuse and alcohol abuse. So, who was the captain of the ship? How did the captain operate the ship? How did they let this happen? Meet Joseph Hazelwood, the captain of the Exxon Valdez oil tanker. He had been working with Exxon for over 20 years. He was the youngest captain of age 32 in the Exxon company. He was appointed in 1970s, but he had one big issue. He had issues with alcohol. And when the news of this event had broke out, the media discovered his 3 DUI charges prior to this event, which 2 of them was when he was operating the vehicle under the influence while his license was suspended and removed, which painted a picture of drunk captain that does not care about his crew or the legal precautions or anything like that. So in the newspapers, the focus was heavily on the people involved rather than the company itself. There was new articles about the drunk captain, how uncaring he is, and then later it was discovered also that captain wasn't even the one operating the tanker. He had gone downstairs for just 15 minutes. That's how long the whole event had taken place. And his third mate, Gregory Cousins, was the one operating the tanker, who was unlicensed. So it painted another bad picture for the captain, for the third mate, for the Exxon. Public was outraged, but most of the outrage was based on the people rather than the environmental impact in itself. And it didn't help that things got even messier with early environmental impact assessments. as most of them were either done by Exxon or sponsored by Exxon. And in early claims, Exxon had heavily downplayed the amount of oil that was spilled, claiming that it was only 250,000 gallons instead of 10 million gallons. And in the early assessments, this one is from 1991, where they claim that the wildlife is recovering nicely. The oil in the ocean is not a problem because ocean will actually self-clean itself. That the Prince William Sound is having record high levels of herring and salmon catches, and that it's not that bad. It's not that bad. The oil spill is not that bad. It's going great. It will not be any long-lasting damages, which, spoiler alert, there were. So in conclusion of the trial, the jury had found Hazelwood not guilty of 3 out of 4 charges. The only charge that he was found guilty of is the improper disposal of the oil, which he later appealed. The Exxon, because of the early assessments and because the extent of the damages was not fully investigated, had only had to pay very little amount early on, but then Exxon itself had spent a lot of money trying to clean it up, and then later in 2008, Exxon had to pay over a couple $100 million in damages and in fundings. And the only good thing that had come out of this was the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, which requires that any responsible party for the oil spill has to pay for the damages and the cleanup. Also, it was discovered that the regulatory systems and proceedings for the transport of oil in the heavily underfunded Coast Guard systems were regulated better afterwards. To gauging the public perception nowadays, I had made my own questionnaire, and what I have found that a lot of young people don't know what the Exxon Valdez oil spill is. It's mostly that the older generations know about it, while a lot of people associate partially Exxon Valdez spill as for the reputation of the oil industry in itself as a whole. So that made me interested, because how can you not know what the oil spill was, yet still associating with the reputation of oil industries as a whole? And that could be explained as it could be parents' prejudices and opinions passed down to the children unconsciously or subconsciously, as well as the name of the spill might not be remembered, but with the assessments and the legal proceedings, the distrust that the public had felt with this oil spill could be also explained for the relation of this. In the later independent studies of the environmental impact of the Exxon Valdez, there had been discovered that there's still oil on the beaches. The wildlife was heavily damaged, with estimated 250,000 seabirds dying, 2,800 sea otters dying, 300 harbor seals, 250 bald eagles, and 22 killer whales, and many more species that are not recovering or unknown status. So as you can see, the impact was very, very big, and this also cemented the distrust in the public with the relation of the oil companies. So you would think with this litigation process, the Oil Pollution Act, and with the other companies seeing the effects of this oil spill, the oil companies would take bigger precautions when they're transporting oil and other products. That's unfortunately not true. I had found the data that says that this year alone there have been over 40 oil spills recorded in America alone. And there's unfortunately nothing to do with that. But for my next research question, I would like to focus on Deepwater Horizon oil spill, especially with how the companies wish to cut down on the price and safety can result in tragic accidents. This is my works cited page. And this was Drowning in Public Memory, the Legacy of Exxon Valdez oil spill.